What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sleeper Colts. I am your host, as always, Cody Felger. And guys, the Colts play their second preseason game tomorrow against the Atlanta Falcons. Colts and Falcons had 2 days of scrimmaging together. And so with that being said, I wanted to talk about some players that I'm watching here for week 2 of the preseason for this team. And we have to start with the backup quarterback position. Of course, between Anthony Richardson and Riley Leonard, where we saw Richardson get the starting, if you want to call that, with the backups in the first preseason game. He got the first half. Riley Leonard with the third string in the second half. Now, this week, it's going to flip-flop, where Riley Leonard will be getting the first half and Anthony Richardson will be getting the second half. And obviously, we've continued to see pretty even split so far. So how does that quarterback competition continue to work itself out? Right now, based off of the week 1 performance, we would say Anthony Richardson probably has a slight advantage, but again, that can change very quickly. If Riley Leonard comes out, looks very good against the 2s, and Anthony Richardson, struggles against the 3s, then okay, we're maybe back to square one here, and then the final preseason game is more of the big indicator. But if we see more of the same of what we saw in week number 1 from both these quarterbacks, it's furthering, potentially giving a slight advantage to Anthony Richardson. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that does work itself out here in regards to this backup quarterback battle. I mean, it's a battle that's been virtually, like I said, lock dead even so far. And so this is going to be an interesting kind of perspective here going off of week 2 to see, is it more of the same, or does Riley Leonard make a strong statement here in week number 2? So very interested in that. And then, with Anthony Richardson, obviously with the 3s, not going to have as much help. Going to be very interesting to see from that standpoint. So that's the first thing I really want to talk about here. And then the second thing is a player who really stood out from the Colts' first preseason game on offense. That's Will Mallory. Does Will Mallory continue to show himself and prove to the Colts that he deserves a spot on the field somewhere, wherever that is? He deserves a role with this offense. Week 1 certainly was great for Will Mallory stock in a lot of ways, right? A lot of people talking about how he's almost forcing the Colts' hand and finding some sort of role for him, because he largely has not had one up to this point with this Colts offense. So if he continues to show out and show some good things in the receiving game, I mean, outside of Tyler Warren, he is by far the best receiving tight end on this team. So do the Colts potentially find ways to get him involved in the passing attack? And very strong performance, like I said, from week 1, where he led the Colts in pretty much every receiving category. So does Will Mallory continue to show off to this coaching staff and tell them, hey, I'm a guy that deserves a chance here with this team? So very intrigued about that in regards to Will Mallory. Does he continue to pick up where he left off last week? For what he lacks in maybe size and run blocking ability, Will Mallory more than makes up for in the receiving game. So I'm curious to see from him, what does he look like here in week 2? Does he continue to show off to this coaching staff? For sure. I'm also intrigued, as we're kind of looking at this, is really that number, you could call it 5 receiver, really, because I think we pretty much have an idea. Again, I could be wrong, but I think we have a decent idea of who the top 4 guys are, and possibly top 5 even. We know probably Ashton Doolin's going to have a role. I mean, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, I think, will have a role in this team. I think he will make the roster. So you could say 5 there, and really outside of that, there's one position here for all these players that are going to be potentially competing in here for that spot. I mean, of course, you have guys like Laquan Treadwell, who's still been on the roster. Anthony Gould's been on the roster a couple of years. You have a couple other guys as well that are sort of newer. Deion Burks, who you drafted. Coleman Owen, who's been that primary backup return guy. So all these guys, I think, have a chance here to show something to this team, and also their ability on special teams is going to be a factor into this decision for this team. So I'm very curious how this all looks and how this all goes about here for this Colts receiving core, because I feel like outside of the top 4, potentially 5, it's kind of a wide open right now for one roster spot, potentially 2, depending how you view Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. But right now, I think it's pretty obvious that this is going to be a very interesting battle the next couple of weeks in seeing who does earn this role right now. And right now, Anthony Gould, I think I would give the advantage just because the punt and kick returns. So that can obviously change if, a player like Deion Burks or Coleman Owen show their prowess as that and also as a receiver. But really, I'm kind of curious how that does work itself out. Because while I think right now Gould has the advantage from that standpoint, I think the other two guys show more upside as legitimate receivers. But obviously, if they're the sixth receiver, they're probably not getting on the field unless a bunch of injuries happen. So it's really going to be fascinating to me how that works itself out there. And then, of course, a guy like Treadwell, who, with all the injuries that were happening, was getting run with the ones at one point. So does he have anything to say as well in regards to that? So going to be a very fascinating battle here in the last couple weeks here, and who does show out here and prove to this coaching staff that they deserve a role with this Colts receiving core. So they're going to have to cut a player you don't want to cut, but that's just going to be the nature of it, unfortunately. So I'm curious about that for sure. I really think as well, when I'm looking at the defensive side of things, I'll actually stick with another position group that I think you kind of know your top players, but some of those backup roles, I'm kind of curious because I feel like they're the same way as receiver. Those cornerback positions, Ward, Sauce, Justin Wally, and Cam Taylor-Britt. But outside of that, I think it's wide open right now. It could be a guy like Mekhi Blackman, who you traded for last year. Could be a player like Jalen Jones and a couple other guys in there, right? So that's another position battle that I'm kind of watching, this kind of back-end roster type of stuff here. So who proves to themselves and maybe who bounces back from week one and shows this team and this coaching staff that they deserve a spot here on this defense as well, and likely a guy that's going to have to play special teams also. So as we stick with the defensive side of the ball, I'm very curious to, again, see some of these young defensive linemen for this team. I mean, we saw a lot of good things from some of your rookies a week ago, especially guys like Caden Curry, George Gums, and even, some linebackers as well, which we'll touch on here. But really specifically on that defensive line, I thought we really saw some good stuff from those two rookies. Adi Tamiwa showed some really good stuff as well. So I'm very intrigued to watch these guys again. And what do they show you here? So that's something I'm definitely fascinated in, is can they continue to pick up where they left off last week? So I want to see these rookies continue to show out. I mean, especially a guy like Caden Curry, we know what he did at Ohio State, and it seems like everywhere he goes, he produces. So I really hope that he does, especially if you need pass rush at some point this year. If you're not getting it from some of the guys ahead of him, could he potentially get on the field as a starter at some point? Look, I know that might sound crazy, but crazier things have happened. So I'm intrigued about both of those guys, and Adi Tamiwa, I really think he deserves a role, just like with Will Mallory, kind of a mid to late round guy that I feel like is earning his way onto getting some snaps this year with the ones. So with CJ Allen back from that hamstring injury, you have a lot of linebackers that you're going to be rotating this year. Right now, it feels like it's been Akeem Davis-Gaither and Jalen Carlisle the last couple days of joint practice, which is kind of fascinating. But you still obviously have Allen, you still have Bryce Betcher, you still have Austin Ajaki. So there is a lot of guys in here that are going to be rotating at linebacker. So I want to see all these guys. I don't know if Akeem Davis-Gaither will play, but seeing guys like Carlisle, seeing guys like the two rookies, seeing Austin Ajaki, like seeing all of these linebackers who had strong week one performances, I honestly have no clue how this is going to look come week one. So I'm intrigued to see all these guys because I really think you have the potential to have a really good and deep linebacker core that you can rotate. And that's so valuable for a team to have multiple capable linebackers. So Colts went young this year at backer, and they made a dedicated decision to get younger and faster, and we've already seen that on display through camp and obviously through the first preseason game. So I want to see more of that. I want to see them make some plays, get to where they need to go, fly from sideline to sideline. I'm really excited to see how that whole thing figures itself out here for sure. And then I think the final thing I will touch on here as the thing I'm continuing to watch is that kicking battle between Blake Grupe and Spencer Schrader. I think as you look at it right now, it's clear and obvious that Blake Grupe has been the better kicker through camp, but we saw Schrader have a strong week one preseason game against the Patriots. So, I'm kind of curious. I don't think that the battle is completely done yet. So, if it happens again where Schrader looks good in the games, and if Grupe misses one, again, it was a 60-yarder, so I'm not going to hold that against him, but that's just a battle I'm going to continue to watch. I think right now, clear-cut favorite is Blake Grupe, but obviously that can change like that. So that is something I am very intrigued about, that backup kicker position between Grupe and Spencer Schrader here. It's going to be a bummer you're going to have to cut one of these guys here before the start of the regular season because they both have some really good things that you could build around for your kicker. But right now, Blake Grupe is the leader, but that could change if Spencer Schrader balls out like he did a week ago. But other than that, guys, that'll really do it for my look at some things I am watching here. Colts will be kicking off tomorrow against Atlanta, so be sure to be on the lookout for that, guys. At home, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. That'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much. And as always, guys, have a good one.